Hi, and welcome back to the Procurement and Finance Coffee Break. I'm Claire, your finance transformation expert.
And apparently, I'm still elevated to the dizzy heights of procurement guru, which is just another way of saying that I haven't mucked up one of the recordings in the last 10 days. So therefore, I continue to be promoted. But look, delighted to welcome our very special guest, Lori Meakin, who's actually going to talk about something that, doesn't seem like it might be involved with procurement and finance, but it absolutely is, which is, how do we go about designing products and services through a gender lens, and we'll understand what more about that in a minute. Yeah, so welcome.
So, Laurie, wonderful to have you here on the Procurement and Finance Coffee Break. Um, I know a little bit about you, and you have decades of experience in branding, advertising, and also understanding how unconscious gender biases shape the way businesses operate. You also wrote a book that's available on Amazon to buy called
Oh, well done.
No
There it
More
is.
There we go. Shayla, no, I like that. That's good.
And before we dive into questions, I thought it might be interesting to hear about what prompted you to write that book and sort of get involved in the work that you do.
Yeah, great question. Well, thank you for having me here, first of all. It's lovely to be chatting with you both. So, yeah, the thing that prompted me to write it was the realization that we're still living in times that are really troubled in as far as gender goes. I know there are economic difficulties, there's all kinds of terrible things going on in the world, but as far as gender goes, I'd sort of expected that we'd be further ahead than we are by now when I was a young woman thinking ahead. And we're not. We're in quite a bad place because we've still got a long way to go for the rights of women to be equal in a lot of ways to those of men. We're seeing a time when LGBTQIA plus people are increasingly coming under attack. But interestingly as well, we're also seeing a world where the manosphere is kind of forming, a place that's kind of creating and fueling some anger and resentment amongst men. So we're seeing a backlash against feminism. We're seeing a rise in misogyny, homophobia, and transphobia. They're all connected, of course. And really interestingly, this backlash, the anti-feminist movement, is particularly strong amongst young men. And that's really unusual because what we generally see over time is each generation be a bit more progressive than the last. But we're seeing the reversal of that, which is the first time we've seen that in sort of modern times. And what that's building is what I call a Menomies mindset, hence the title of the book, No More Menomies, because it feels like to men, a lot of men, it feels like they're being positioned at the very least as the problem and actually more often as the enemy. And that's a really unhelpful thing because it's stopping progress. It's creating these sort of entrenched views of us versus them, zero-sum game. You've got to pick a side, there's winners and losers. And really importantly, that's damaging all of us. So it's damaging men as well as women, gay and straight, cis and trans, damaging everybody because of this sort of enemies, menemies mindset that we've got happening at the moment.
Wow. Okay. So, look, great scene set. I guess. Look, if I'm going to dive straight in and say, look, your work has been, really focused on trying to discover sort of the invisible gender biases that that lead businesses to do things even though they're trying to do the right thing, and outwardly they're looking like they're doing all the right thing, but they're still actually primarily operating and designing products or services from that, as that default male perspective. I mean, based on everything you've seen, what's the root cause of that default male perspective, and why is it such a problem to eliminate it in the way that we operate going forward?
Yeah, it's a really good question and it's so important. And in all of the work that I did, so for the book, I interviewed lots of men, had really deep conversations with them. And the point I would always start with was this is not about judgment, right? It's not.
Right.
So no man alive today made the patriarchal system that we live in. It's been going for thousands of years. And
Yeah.
because of that, um, there's lots of about the way that the world has been built and the way we understand each other and that we operate and that we think about things, that was built for a world where men occupied public spaces and women occupied domestic spaces, and the two were very different. And that's grown up over so many generations
Mm.
that actually it seems so normal in a lot of ways that we don't even think about it. And when I say we, this is the other thing that's really important. A lot of the time, women don't realize it as well. So the
Yeah.
process of
Right.
the work that I did, there's an amazing book by Caroline Criado Perez called Invisible Women, another brilliant book by Marianne Sieghart called The Authority Gap. And I summarize the learnings from both of them in my book. But they really open my eyes because they unpack a whole load of things about the way we build products, the way we build services, the way we understand each other, um, that women actually kind of fall foul of as well.
Right.
And
Mm.
again,
Right.
importantly, in some areas, when it comes to traditionally feminine things like parenting, the bias works the other way round. But most of the world has been built default male because that's how it grew up over centuries, and all of us are blind to it a lot of the time without even realizing.
Wow, that's really eye-opening, and I've read that book, The Authority Gap, and it's
Mhm.
quite quite an interesting book. Seem to remember there was an example she gave of, I think it was the Northern Irish Prime Minister went to visit the Pope, and he assumed her husband was the Prime Minister, and kind of
Yeah.
yeah
Yeah,
so
and we see that play out in the
Yeah.
world of work a lot. So a lot of the time in customer service, especially if it's a high ticket item, you'll hear women talking about they'll be going in to buy a house or a car or a fridge and
mm,
actually have to kind of try and get the attention of the salesperson back
Wow.
onto them because we just naturally assume that the man
mm,
is more likely to be the breadwinner and the woman is more likely to be there in a supporting role. So it
mm,
happens all the time, and we all do it
mm.
without even realizing.
Mm.
So that's really eye-opening. So if you're a business and let's say that that even for the women in your employment, they
Mm.
might be um, automatically blind to some of these things just because
Mm.
it's kind of ingrained in your
Mhm.
upbringing, in your culture. How does a business start to identify and overcome these invisible gender biases in their
Mhm.
and also how they operate?
Yeah, so I think the first thing that I talk a lot about
Yeah.
is to recognize that there is an issue and that we might all be blind to some of this stuff. Again, I
Right.
think sometimes the conversations can often go, we need a better balance of men and women and all kinds of lived experiences in, boardrooms and kind of product development teams, and that is absolutely true. But I
Mhm.
say that's not enough. We need to actively go, what is it that we're missing? If we apply a gendered lens on this and really understand the things that are so natural to us because we've done them for so many generations, what do we
Right.
then discover? And I think the really exciting thing about doing that is it opens up opportunity because most of us aren't realizing this stuff already. When someone fixes it, it's incredible. It's like magic, and people will go, wow,
Right.
that's amazing. I
Mm.
sometimes say it's like if you're a left-handed person in a right-handed world, when someone makes a pair of left-handed scissors and they actually work for you, it's like, wow.
I know this feeling of joy. Trust me.
Yeah, and it's if you're not left-handed and you've never had to kind of do that, then you won't notice that. But
Right.
also, so that's important. But there are things where even if you are, to extend this analogy, even if you are a left-handed person, you may not realize that some of this stuff is going on. But when that problem's solved for you, it's incredible, it's magical, and it can create really kind of strong competitive advantage for businesses.
Mm. So, so Laurie, that all sounds quite theoretical. I think what would be
Mhm.
useful, and I know you've got some of these examples on your
Yeah,
website, is if you talk through some of these actual examples that people may have heard of to sort of
yeah,
bring it to life.
yeah. So one of the ones that I found, and it's so funny discovering things that you didn't know. So I've been walking around on my feet for half a century. I had no idea that women's feet were a different shape to men's. I obviously knew they were smaller, they were a different size. but women's feet are a fundamentally different shape. And that means when you're wearing kind of performance sports shoes, at the moment, most shoes, trainers, sports shoes, running shoes, football boots, that are sold as women's have actually been built just on a scaled down version of a male last. So they don't actually fit women's feet as well, because they're not made for women's feet. They're made for a mini version of a man's foot. And that means they don't perform as well. It's one of the things that can contribute to injuries for sports people, as well as things like the way we understand kind of personal training and fitness regimes, and the investment in sport doesn't sort of take account of women's bodies in the same way. But that's something I always use to go, look, just having a woman in the room isn't always enough, because if we're all sitting there unaware of the fact that our feet are a different shape, we're not going to be able to seize this opportunity. Which is fascinating, right? But there are a few independent brands have started doing stuff around this. Alison Felix, the US athlete, this brand called Ida. But Nike have just recently created a football boot that does that, called the Luna. It sold out. It was incredibly successful. And I think the really interesting thing about this as well is that it might be that companies are frightened to do something because they think if we make this better, we're bringing attention to the fact that everything else isn't like this. But I think what Nike shows is that you can do it. Actually, if you just start making progress, that's great. And it's not like everyone's sort of decided that they're never going to buy another regular Nike shoe again. So that's one example. There's a really alarming example that's sort of the poster child actually for these kind of conversations, which is around car design, which I found extraordinary. So cars at the moment, just about every car on the road, I've not found an exception yet, although I know Volvo are doing some stuff in this area, but most cars are designed around a crash test dummy that again is default male in its design. So women have different, our pelvis is a different shape. We have, breasts, and this is before you even take things like pregnancy into account, different musculature, which means that the strength of the seat back needs to kind of work in a different way. But because cars aren't designed around women's bodies in the driving seat, women are 47% more likely to be seriously injured and 17% more likely to die in an identical crash, because cars are still designed default male, which blew my mind when I discovered that.
Yeah, goodness me.
And then there are some other kind of lovely examples as well. So there's a makeup brand called War Paint that that was launched relatively recently that helps men have that same thing that women, I mean, we could talk about kind of pressure to look beautiful another time, but for men who do want to not look as tired if they've just come off a transatlantic flight and they're feeling a bit under the weather, they can have concealer or foundation that's made from men's skin in the same way that women can use makeup like that as a bit of a pick-me-up. And one other final one that I love is a bar in Portland, Oregon, started by an ex-professional athlete, and it's called the Sports Bra, which I think is a genius name.
Yeah.
And it's a sports bar that plays only women's sport on its screen. And it does that because it they recognize that 95% of televised sport in the US is male sport, but we all know there's a huge interest in women's sport growing. So they only play women's sport. And interestingly, what they find is they don't only get women coming and watching. They've got a mixed audience coming and enjoying this stuff, but it just has a bit of a different energy to the typical kind of American sports bar, which is a very sort of masculine feeling environment.
Sure. Okay.
Do you know what?
So
I love this, right? And Claire is about to raise her eyebrows because I'm going to link this to ESG and sustainability.
There you go. I'm with you.
Right, here we go. There's a common thing, right? If I've just shared 2 conferences, big topic, and ESG, big discussion around whether companies are doing it because the law is coming in and therefore they're complying with the law, or whether they're doing it because they want to achieve, the genuine change. I think, diversity, equal opportunities legislation in all of its different flavors, same issue. There are those that are complying with the letter of the law because they don't want to get prosecuted, and there are those that are doing it. And you've just made a perfect example of the same thing. left-handed scissors. You know, if we think about it, there's no law to say that you have to make left-handed scissors. But if you take a step back, the difference is whether you're focusing on compliance or making something, you know, or just trying to change the way you've always done it in order to not get told off, or there is a genuine focus on outcomes. You know, the purpose of ESG law, of equal opportunity law, of making left-handed scissors is you're making it better for someone. And I did find his name. I said I would, and I did. I had the pleasure at Procurement Marketing last December of interviewing Fraser McDonald, who is part of the sort of corporate procurement team at Flutter. And he totally changed my understanding of all of this, because he said it's not about, you know, trying to do things differently or better. It's the word you should be focusing on is accessibility. And in accessibility, the question that we should ask ourselves, not just about, you know, our work environments or opportunities for promotion, or is whether there is anything in the way we work or the products we make or the services we deliver that don't offer an equal benefit to everyone. And by everyone, you know, my link to sustainability, I mean everyone, including the planet itself. So I guess, you know, with that focus on accessibility, you see, I did get my ESG linkage in. I told you I would, but accessibility, where we're trying to achieve the right outcome, you know, products and services do the right thing and genuinely make a difference in a good way for, you know, the people that are acquiring them. You know, how do you build that in to your service offering or your product design process so that you are making sure you're not just making different sized trainers, you're actually designing something which is going to achieve that you know, that remove those, as you say, those invisible barriers which are there. And, you know, as you said, you know, I, like everyone else, wouldn't have known, simply wouldn't have known, you know, until, you know, people like yourself make us aware. So go on then, how does a business go about making that change?
So I think the first thing, and I love the kind of conversation that we're having here, because it's a business first conversation. So it goes without saying, I think there is a moral argument for all of this, as there is to take care of the planet. But that's not my start point here, because it's too easy for businesses to go, oh, times are tough, we've got economic, you know, it's a tough market out there, we haven't got time for all that sort of nice, good for society, good for the planet stuff. We're over here doing the business of business. So I'm like, okay, this is all about doing the business of business, because first thing is to be motivated to do it because it's going to serve customers or consumers or audiences better. And there's nothing a business likes as a motivation more than knowing it's going to drive growth or an increase in revenue or profitability, competitive advantage, whatever your business metric is. So that's the first thing, I think. Then, as you said, it's about going beyond just the number of people in the room and going, right, if we're going to do that, let's really understand the opportunities to solve unsolved needs, unmet needs in our audience, our consumers, our clients. And then genuinely understanding those and knowing that if we look at people, generally all the data says when we think we're being gender neutral, we're not. So whenever we say people think X, or people find blah, I will always go, what people? Let's just break that down first of all, and have a look at the differences, because then we can start to see some interesting opportunities. But the other thing, and I would say this, wouldn't I? It's the reason I started my consultancy. It's that getting experts in the same way we would with tech, having people who actually really understand some of the stuff that's invisible to a lot of people can really help. So we go into businesses and help with all of this. But I think really understanding, being curious, going, what might we be missing? And where is there an opportunity to serve our customers, our clients, our audiences better? Because again, all of the data shows really, really clearly that when you do something for an audience that has traditionally been overlooked, even if they don't realize they're being overlooked. So again, the Nike Lunar example, people love it. So they are more likely to choose it. They're more likely to stay loyal, to recommend, to pay a higher price premium. And there's even evidence that says if you don't get it brilliant first time around, they're even more likely to give you a second go. So there's so much upside,
Right.
there's so much competitive business advantage, but you have to focus on that, put it right at the center of what you're doing, and kind of keep asking questions to overcome those defaults and kind of bring in expertise that can help.
Wow. Thank
Wow.
you.
Yeah. Fantastic. So, Lori, as we wrap up then, what's one piece of advice you'd give business leaders looking to embrace a more intersectional or lens approach? Because obviously you can engage in consultants, like yourself. I suppose it's any area. If you're not a meta expert in it, there's probably a consultant who can help you. But what advice would you give to a business leader looking to sort of embrace what you're talking about?
Yeah, great. So I think, as I said, the first thing is don't just talk about it as a moral thing. It's really easy for people to feel attacked or for people to kind of feel like they take sides. Look at it as a business thing and start with a question. Just go, what is it that we might be missing? And that being curious like that, I think, is so helpful. There's loads of data, loads of information out there. We just need to ask the questions and then kind of start looking. Well, the answers will start to appear. So I think having that kind of humility and curiosity is really, really important. And to recognize that we all have these ingrained biases. It's not about one group of people telling another group of people that they're doing things wrong. It's about all of us going on a journey fueled by curiosity together. I think the other thing that's really important is once you do start uncovering some of this stuff, it can feel overwhelming, right? Because when I say the world is built kind of largely default male, it is. There's like millions of these things that are happening, and that can sometimes feel overwhelming. So I would always say pick one or two things that you can do where you can make a difference, where everyone's motivated to do it, where you've got the ability to make a difference. Measure the success of that because it will make everybody feel good. And don't worry, don't be distracted by the million and one things you can't do. Do the one or two things you can, because if a million of us do that, that'd make a big difference. And I think so, don't get overwhelmed. And then the third thing I'd say is just think about diversity of thought and perspectives. So really understanding that, again, one of the reasons that looking at the data with a more quizzical lens, looking for things that you might miss and having different lived experiences and points of view in the room is they bring diversity of thought. And if we can really embrace that and really kind of go, how can I listen actively to other people and ask questions and explore? That's really going to start to give us opportunities to innovate. And that means kind of future-proofing our business. Because if we do this right, the future should look like a really exciting opportunity. And I think too often at the moment, the future feels like a threat. So really kind of just going one step at a time. What can we do to make change? How do we measure it to prove the success? And how do we not get, don't let the fact that we can't change everything all at once stop us.
I guess what I'm hearing there, Laurie, is like it's almost like two prerequisites to doing this. One is, does everyone who works in your company look exactly like you? And if the answer is yes, then you're not going to get much diversity of thought, and that's something which I have spoken on quite a few times in the past. And then the other thing is around the innovation bit. Actually, from a business operating in a operating model point of view, that requires something in your operating model to embed the capacity for innovation and budget and resources associated with that. Because if your business operating model allows everyone's stretched to capacity, there's no actual roles and responsibilities for innovation, then it's probably not going to happen, right? So
yeah, I think you're right. And it's really interesting to go. So there are working with the things that you can control, I think is such an important place to start, because there are things that we can all do that can work with current processes, with the current updates, with the training that you're doing. So to go back to that, if you're in a business that has a customer service role, how do you push out training and updates and information to those people? And it's quite easy to give, and not expensive, to give a little nudge that just reminds people actively to make sure that you're not accidentally kind of talking to one gender more than another, or making assumptions about who's leading the conversation. With tech, I mean, if people took this as seriously as they take kind of keeping on top of tech, it would just be amazing, wouldn't it? Because we know that with anything like technology, we have to keep updating it. And just any time we do any of those things, I just thinking, what are we missing? If we look at this through a gendered lens, are there opportunities to do little things that won't take a lot of investment, won't take a lot of energy, but could actually reap really big rewards?
Sure, I love that. Look, we can't thank you enough for joining us. And I think
It's a pleasure.
the thing that and I know Claire feels the same way. The thing that I love about these discussions, but particularly the discussions where we're bringing guests on, is just the opportunity to think more broadly about the things that we see at work. And okay, we're procurement and finance, but actually, you use the word intersectional. It's about everything crosses and affects everything else. And I wax lyrical about my good friend Jamie Pave at Zurich. He did a similar thing. Accessibility. His accessibility challenge was to address social enterprises coming in and being able to supply a multinational insurance company. Now, he did it, and he did it by just making, as you said, a very simple change, which was the weighting of a decision that says if two enterprises can deliver what we want and one's a social enterprise, they get the business. And it's such a small thing to do, but it has transformed, from a small diversity target, has now become a mainstay of their supply base. And the unexpected things, and you've talked about them: innovation, diversity brings innovation, employee satisfaction. You said, customers will even if you don't get it right first time, customers will notice that you're trying. Employees are just the same; they're customers as well, in a way.
Absolutely.
So people recognize, though, as you say, those small steps to make progress. And I mean, I'm frantically not ignoring you, but actually writing in my book in a digital age. And the key words that have come out: opportunity. This is an opportunity. By removing these invisible barriers, it's an opportunity to actually grow your business.
100.
Frankly,
That
what should be motivating you is to, which it sounds ridiculous, but surely we're motivated to want to grow the offering and the outreach and the outcomes of the products or services we do. And it actually starts with, just as you say, a curiosity to ask yourself, is there something else I could do? Or is there something in the way that I'm doing it that is limiting, the size of that opportunity? And I think, the two closing things: get help. And we've talked about this so many times in treasury, in finance, in procurement. People sometimes say, well, getting consultancy is a measure of failure because I need to reach for help. Well, no, it isn't, because you're not failing. What you're doing is asking someone who's got a really good independent perspective and a great experience of observing and doing, that can help you take those first early curious steps to working out what's different, right?
Absolutely. And then get you to the position where you can carry on doing it. And I think that's sort of injection of what are we missing? How can we look at this differently? It's absolutely, that's absolutely valuable.
I'm so glad you said that, because I'm ex-consultant, Claire's ex-consultant, and in my book there is nothing worse than a consultancy that leaves you needing to go back to them. Good consultancy launches you to be able to do stuff yourself.
Absolutely.
I could not agree more. So look, I've taken a ton of notes. I know I'm going to watch this again, but look, honestly, from just a real pleasure listening to your experience and sharing. I will go away from this thinking seriously, women's shoes were always designed as small men's shoes? I mean,
Yeah.
I had no clue.
No, me neither. It's amazing, isn't it? And
Okay.
thank you so much. I've really enjoyed this, and in particular the curiosity and the energy and the positivity. I think that's sort of really clear from this conversation. That's what's magical, I think, and that's what can take us all forward to grow our businesses and serve everyone a bit better at the same time.
Fabulous.
Fabulous. Thanks a lot, Lori. And we really enjoy doing these interviews because we always learn something new every time, don't we? Every time someone different, we always learn something.
Well, thank you. It's a real pleasure.
Thank you ever so much. And listen, to everyone out there, look, I hope you've enjoyed this. We're actually doing more with guests than without guests now, which is kind of fun because there's only so many times that Claire and I can chat to one another about treasury function, which is really cool. So look, if you've got, it's really exciting, just so we're clear, not least because we had a guest talking about treasury function, so I'd probably just dropped a huge clanger. But look, the point is, look, if you're out there and you're watching this and you've got something that you are really passionate about, get in touch. Even if Claire and I haven't got a clue what it is, we would love to hear how you want to build that passion into your business or how other businesses could benefit for it. And trust me, we will always find a way to link it back to procurement and finance because we are the center of the universe. So it's fine. All right, everyone. Listen, from myself, thanks very much and see you next time. Lori, again, thank you from me.
Pleasure. Thanks very much.
Bye.